Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist. Tonight, we're stepping into the quiet world of plants, those silent, rooted beings that fill our world with green. They don't speak, they don't move quickly, and yet they're responsible for nearly everything alive on this planet. From the towering redwoods to the tiniest moss, plants have shaped Earth into a habitable home, breathing life into the atmosphere and creating the foundation for all ecosystems. As you settle in, let your mind wander through forests and gardens, through deserts and rainforests, exploring the hidden intelligence of organisms we too often take for granted. You'll discover that plants are far stranger, more connected, and more aware than you might have imagined. And just before we begin, if these calm, curious explorations help you unwind or give you a quiet way to end your day, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. What makes plants so important to life on Earth? Imagine Earth without plants. No forests, no grasslands, no flowers or crops. Just bare rock, water, and sky. It would be a dead planet, incapable of supporting complex life as we know it. Plants are the foundation of nearly every ecosystem on Earth, the primary producers that convert solar energy into chemical energy that all other organisms depend on. They create the oxygen we breathe. Roughly half of Earth's atmospheric oxygen comes from land plants, with the other half from ocean phytoplankton. Every breath you take is a gift from photosynthetic organisms. Plants also stabilize soil, prevent erosion, regulate water cycles, and moderate climate. They provide food, shelter, and medicine for countless species, including humans. Our entire civilization is built on agriculture, on our ability to cultivate and harvest plants. Without them, there would be no animals, no fungi, no humans. The evolutionary appearance of plants transformed Earth from a barren world into a living one. They turned carbon dioxide into oxygen, altered the atmosphere, and made multicellular life possible. Plants aren't just important, they're essential. They're the quiet architects of habitability, working tirelessly, generation after generation, to maintain the conditions life requires. How do plants turn sunlight into food? At first glance, photosynthesis seems like magic. Plants take sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, three simple ingredients, and transform them into glucose and oxygen. It's the most important chemical reaction on Earth, the process that powers the biosphere. Inside plant cells are structures called chloroplasts, ancient organelles that were once free-living bacteria, now enslaved by evolution to perform this crucial task. Within the chloroplasts, chlorophyll molecules absorb light energy, primarily red and blue wavelengths, while reflecting green, which is why plants appear green to our eyes. This captured light energy splits water molecules, releasing oxygen as a byproduct and generating chemical energy. That energy is then used to convert carbon dioxide from the air into glucose, a simple sugar that serves as fuel and building material. The glucose can be used immediately for growth and metabolism, or stored as starch for later. This process is remarkably efficient, capturing about 3 to 6% of available solar energy. Plants are essentially living solar panels, converting light into chemical bonds. They're self-sustaining machines that build themselves from air, water, and light. It's a feat of biochemical engineering that humans still struggle to replicate artificially. Can plants really breathe like we do? Here's something surprising. Plants do breathe, though not quite like animals. They perform cellular respiration, breaking down glucose to release energy, consuming oxygen, and producing carbon dioxide, just like we do. This happens continuously, day and night, in every living cell. But plants also photosynthesize during daylight, which reverses the equation, consuming carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen. The net effect during the day is oxygen production. But at night, when photosynthesis stops, plants are net oxygen consumers and carbon dioxide producers, just like animals. They breathe through tiny pores called stomata, mostly on the undersides of leaves. These stomata open and close, regulating gas exchange and water loss. It's a delicate balance. Open too wide, and the plant loses precious water through transpiration. Close too tight, and it can't get enough carbon dioxide for photosynthesis or release oxygen efficiently. Plants constantly adjust, responding to light levels, humidity, temperature, and carbon dioxide concentrations. So yes, plants breathe. They just do it more slowly, more subtly, in ways invisible to casual observation. Every leaf is a tiny lung, exchanging gases with the atmosphere in a slow, continuous rhythm. Why are leaves green? Think about this for a moment. Plants depend on sunlight for energy, yet they reflect green light instead of absorbing it. Why would they waste a portion of the spectrum? The answer lies in the structure of chlorophyll, the pigment responsible for photosynthesis. Chlorophyll molecules are particularly good at absorbing red and blue light, using those wavelengths to drive the chemical reactions that produce food. Green light, on the other hand, is less efficiently absorbed. So much of it is reflected back, giving leaves their characteristic color. But why this particular arrangement? Why not absorb all wavelengths? Some scientists think it's evolutionary happenstance. Chlorophyll evolved this way early on, and plants have been stuck with it ever since. Others propose that reflecting green light might protect plants from excessive energy, preventing damage from too much absorbed light. Or perhaps there's an advantage to using red and blue light specifically, since these wavelengths have the right energy levels for driving photosynthetic chemistry. Interestingly, not all plants are green. Some have red or purple leaves, containing additional pigments that mask the chlorophyll. But beneath those colors, chlorophyll is still there, quietly doing its work, turning light into life. How do trees communicate with each other? Let's go beneath the forest floor, into a hidden network most people never see. Trees are connected, not just by touching branches above, but by an underground web of fungal threads called mycorrhizae. These fungi form partnerships with tree roots, extending far beyond where roots reach, creating a biological internet that connects trees across entire forests. Through this network, trees can share resources. A large, well-established tree receiving ample sunlight can send sugars through the fungal network to smaller trees struggling in shade. In return, the fungi receive sugars from the trees, a mutually beneficial exchange. But it's not just food being transferred. Trees also send warning signals through this network. When a tree is attacked by insects, it releases chemical signals into the soil, warning neighboring trees of the threat. Those trees respond by increasing their production of defensive compounds, preparing for potential attack. This means trees are socially connected, capable of cooperative behavior that benefits the forest community. They're not isolated individuals competing for resources. They're members of a complex society, supporting each other, sharing information, and responding collectively to threats. The forest is less a collection of individuals and more a superorganism, connected and communicating beneath the soil. Do plants have feelings? This question touches something deep in us. The desire to connect, to find kinship with other living things. Do plants feel pain, pleasure, or emotion? The honest answer is we don't know. And the question itself is complicated. Plants don't have brains, neurons, or anything resembling an animal nervous system. They can't feel pain the way we understand it, because pain requires a centralized nervous system to process and interpret signals as suffering. However, plants clearly respond to their environment in sophisticated ways. They can detect touch, sound, light, gravity, temperature, and chemical signals. They react to herbivore damage by releasing defensive chemicals. They grow toward light and away from obstacles. These responses suggest awareness of a sort, though whether it constitutes feeling is debatable. Some researchers prefer the term plant intelligence or plant sentience, describing plants' ability to process information and make decisions without anthropomorphizing them. Plants are alive and responsive, sensing their world and reacting appropriately. Whether this qualifies as feeling depends on how you define the term. Perhaps plants experience reality in ways completely foreign to animal experience, a form of awareness we can't imagine or understand. Or perhaps their responses are purely mechanical, sophisticated but unconscious. Either way, they're far more responsive than they appear. Can plants hear sounds? Here's something that sounds impossible. Recent research suggests plants can detect and respond to sound vibrations. In one study, plants exposed to the sound of a caterpillar munching on leaves increased their production of defensive chemicals, even when no actual caterpillars were present. Other studies have shown that plant roots grow toward the sound of running water, helping them find moisture in the soil. Some flowers even respond to the sound of bees, increasing the sweetness of their nectar when they detect buzzing at specific frequencies. The mechanism isn't fully understood. Plants don't have ears or structures analogous to eardrums, but they may sense vibrations through their cell walls, detecting mechanical disturbances at a cellular level. Sound is, after all, just mechanical waves traveling through air or substrate. Plants are sensitive to physical stimuli, so it's not entirely surprising they might detect acoustic vibrations. What is surprising is how specifically they respond, distinguishing between different sounds and reacting appropriately. This opens fascinating questions about plant perception. What else might they sense? How rich is their experience of the world? Plants exist in a sensory landscape we're only beginning to understand, responding to signals we didn't know they could detect. How do roots know which way to grow? Imagine being a seed germinating underground. You have no eyes, no light sensors yet since you're buried in darkness, but you need to send your roots down into the soil for water and nutrients, and your shoot upward toward light and air. How do you know which way is which? Plants use gravity. Specialized cells in root tips contain dense starch granules called statoliths that settle to the lowest point within the cell, like tiny lead weights. The plant senses where these statoliths are and grows accordingly. Roots grow downward in the direction of gravity, a response called positive gravitropism. Shoots, meanwhile, exhibit negative gravitropism, growing upward against gravity. But roots also respond to water gradients, growing toward moisture in a process called hydrotropism. They avoid obstacles, growing around rocks and following paths of least resistance. They even seem to sense nearby roots, sometimes avoiding them to reduce competition, sometimes growing toward them if they're from the same plant, creating denser root networks. Roots navigate through total darkness, following chemical, physical, and gravitational cues to find what they need. It's navigation without a brain, decision-making without consciousness, yet remarkably effective. The root tip explores like a blind animal, probing, sensing, responding to its subterranean environment with uncanny precision. What happens inside a seed? Let's pause on something we often take for granted: a seed. It's a time capsule, a plant frozen in suspended animation, waiting for the right moment to begin life. Inside that hard shell is an embryonic plant, complete with a tiny root shoot and first leaves, all bundled up with a supply of food, stored starches, proteins, and oils. The seed is dormant, its metabolism slowed to almost nothing, capable of waiting for months, years, sometimes decades for favorable conditions. When the right combination of moisture, temperature, and sometimes light arrives, germination begins. Water enters the seed, rehydrating dried tissues and activating enzymes. The embryo awakens, metabolism increases, and cells begin dividing. The seed coat splits. First, the root emerges, pushing into the soil, anchoring the seedling, and beginning to absorb water. Then the shoot breaks free, pushing upward toward light. The stored food is broken down, providing energy until the first leaves can photosynthesize. It's a remarkable transition from dormancy to active life, from potential to growth. Seeds are among nature's most ingenious inventions, allowing plants to spread through space and time, to wait out unfavorable conditions, and to colonize new territories. Every seed contains possibility, a future forest or field waiting in miniature. How can plants grow in complete darkness? At first, this seems impossible. Plants need light for photosynthesis. So how can they grow in darkness? The answer is they can't, at least not for long. But seeds can germinate and begin growing in total darkness, using stored energy, hoping to reach light before their reserves run out. You've probably seen this if you've ever found a potato sprouting pale, ghostly shoots in a dark cupboard. Without light, these shoots grow long and spindly, a response called etoylation. The plant is essentially gambling, investing its stored energy into rapid upward growth, betting it can reach light before dying. The shoots are pale because they haven't produced chlorophyll yet. There's no point making photosynthetic machinery without light. If light is found in time, the plant transitions rapidly, producing chlorophyll, turning green, and beginning photosynthesis. If not, it exhausts its reserves and dies. Some plants have adapted to extremely low light conditions, growing on forest floors beneath dense canopy. They survive on the tiny percentage of light that filters through, photosynthesizing very slowly, growing incrementally. But true darkness? That's lethal, eventually. Plants are fundamentally solar-powered organisms. Without light, they're running on battery. And when the battery dies, so do they. Why do some plants eat insects? Think about a problem. You're a plant rooted in soil that's poor in nutrients, particularly nitrogen, which is essential for building proteins and growing. You can't move to better soil. What do? Some plants evolved an ingenious solution. Supplement your diet by catching and digesting insects. Carnivorous plants live in nutrient-poor environments like bogs and swamps where nitrogen is scarce. By trapping insects and other small animals, they extract nitrogen and other nutrients from the prey's body, giving them a competitive advantage in hostile environments. It's important to understand that these plants still photosynthesize. They don't eat insects for energy. They eat them for nutrients, particularly nitrogen, that they can't get adequately from poor soil. This adaptation has evolved independently in several plant families, producing a variety of trapping mechanisms: snap traps like Venus flytraps, sticky traps like sundews, pitfall traps like pitcher plants. Each represents a different solution to the same problem. Carnivory is metabolically expensive, requiring specialized structures and digestive enzymes, so it only makes sense where nutrients are scarce. In rich soil, these plants would be outcompeted by species that invest energy in growth rather than traps, but in the right niche, carnivory works beautifully. What makes the Venus flytrap so unique? Here's something surprising about Venus flytraps. They can count. Their trap mechanism is triggered by tiny hairs on the inner surface of the leaf lobes. But a single touch isn't enough to spring the trap. That would waste energy on false alarms from raindrops or falling debris. Instead, the plant counts. The trap only closes if two different hairs are touched within about 20 seconds, or if the same hair is touched twice. This simple counting mechanism prevents unnecessary closures. Once triggered, the lobes snap shut in less than a tenth of a second, one of the fastest movements in the plant kingdom. The mechanism involves rapid changes in cell shape and turgor pressure, essentially turning the leaf inside out along a preset crease. After closing, the plant continues monitoring. If the trapped object is too small or not struggling, the trap reopens within hours, conserving energy. But if something substantial is caught and struggling, the trap seals tighter and begins secreting digestive enzymes. The digestion process takes about 10 days, after which the trap reopens, revealing the dried husk of the insect. Each trap can close about 3 to 5 times before the leaf dies and is replaced. Venus flytraps are native only to a small region of North and South Carolina, growing in nitrogen-poor, acidic bogs, a testament to how specialized adaptations fit specific environments. How do pitcher plants trap their prey? Let's explore a different strategy. Pitcher plants create beautiful vase-shaped leaves that fill with rainwater, forming tiny pools. The rim of the pitcher is often brightly colored and produces sweet nectar, attracting insects. The inner walls are slippery, coated with waxy scales or downward-pointing hairs that make climbing out nearly impossible. Once an insect lands on the rim, it's easy to slip and fall into the water below. Some pitcher plants add their own digestive enzymes to the water, breaking down drowned insects and absorbing nutrients. Others rely on bacterial decomposition or small aquatic insects living in the pitcher to process the prey. It's a miniature ecosystem, a death trap for some insects, but a home for others adapted to survive the acidic, nutrient-rich water. Some mosquito larvae, for instance, live in pitcher plants, feeding on other trapped organisms. Certain spiders and frogs take advantage of the trap, waiting at the rim to catch visiting insects without falling in themselves. The largest pitcher plants can trap not just insects but small rodents, amphibians, and birds, though such catches are rare. These plants are patient predators, sitting motionless, waiting for the unwary to approach. They're beautiful and deadly, using a lure rather than active hunting. Can a plant move on its own? Most plants seem utterly immobile, rooted to one spot for their entire lives. But look closer and you'll find movement everywhere. Some plants move rapidly. The sensitive plant, Mimosa pudica, folds its leaves within seconds of being touched, possibly to startle herbivores or reduce its apparent size. Certain orchid flowers have trigger mechanisms that catapult pollen onto visiting insects. The Venus flytrap snaps shut. These movements are driven by rapid changes in cell turgor pressure. Not muscles, but their genuine, observable motion. Other plants move slowly but deliberately. Vines and climbing plants exhibit circumnutation, circular searching movements as they grow, sweeping through space looking for support. Time-lapse photography reveals plants are constantly in motion, stems swaying, leaves tracking the sun across the sky. Sunflowers famously turn their faces toward the sun throughout the day, a phenomenon called heliotropism, maximizing light capture. Roots grow and twist, exploring the soil. Even trees sway and bend in wind, and recent research suggests they might sense and remember wind patterns, growing stronger wood on the windward side. Plants move, just more slowly than animals, on timescales matching their metabolism. Watch long enough, and even the most static plant reveals its dynamism. Why do some trees live for thousands of years? Think about longevity. Most animals have finite lifespans. Humans might reach 100 years, dogs 15, mayflies a single day. But some trees live for thousands of years. Individuals that were saplings before written history began. What allows such extraordinary longevity? Part of the answer is modular growth. Unlike animals with fixed body plans, trees grow by adding new modules, branches, roots, leaves, year after year. They can lose entire branches or even most of their trunk to lightning or fire, and continue living, regrowing from remaining tissue. Trees don't have vital organs in the way animals do. There's no single point of failure, no heart or brain whose loss means death. Trees also have remarkable defenses against disease and decay. They produce antimicrobial compounds, seal off damaged tissue, and constantly replace old parts with new growth. Only a thin layer beneath the bark, the cambium, is actually alive and growing. The heartwood at the center is dead, serving only as structural support. As long as the cambium survives, the tree continues. Ancient trees like bristlecone pines grow in harsh environments where competition and disease are minimal, extending lifespan further. They grow slowly, building dense, durable wood, waiting out millennia with patience we can barely comprehend. What's the oldest living plant on Earth? Let's go to the White Mountains of California, to a grove of bristlecone pines growing at high elevation in harsh, rocky soil. Here lives a tree named Methuselah, over 4,800 years old. It was a seedling when the Egyptian pyramids were being built. But even Methuselah isn't the oldest. There's another bristlecone pine in the same region, unnamed for protection, confirmed to be over 5,000 years old. These trees grow incredibly slowly in the cold, dry conditions, adding barely a millimeter of width per year in some rings. The slow growth creates dense wood resistant to rot and insects, contributing to longevity. But individual trees aren't the only contenders for oldest plant. There are clonal colonies where a single genetic individual spreads through root suckers, creating what looks like a forest of separate trees but is actually one organism. Pando, a quaking aspen colony in Utah, covers over 100 acres and may be over 80,000 years old, though dating clonal colonies is difficult. In Sweden, a Norway spruce tree's root system has been dated to nearly 10,000 years old, though the visible trunk is much younger. These ancient organisms were alive before agriculture, before civilization, silent witnesses to the entire span of human history. They're living bridges to the deep past. How do trees store carbon? Here's something crucial for understanding climate. Trees are carbon storage devices, pulling carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and locking it away in wood. Through photosynthesis, trees absorb CO2, break it apart, release the oxygen, and incorporate the carbon into sugars. These sugars are used to build cellulose, lignin, and other structural compounds that form wood. As the tree grows, adding rings year after year, it's essentially building itself from air, turning atmospheric carbon into solid trunk, branches, and roots. A large tree can store hundreds of pounds of carbon over its lifetime. Forests collectively store enormous amounts, roughly 300 billion tons of carbon globally, in their biomass alone, with even more stored in forest soils. This makes forests vital in regulating Earth's climate, acting as carbon sinks that offset human emissions. When trees die and decompose, or when forests burn, that carbon is released back into the atmosphere. This is why deforestation is so problematic for climate change. It both eliminates carbon sinks and releases stored carbon. Conversely, planting trees and protecting forests helps mitigate climate change by removing carbon from the atmosphere. Every tree is a small climate solution, quietly working over decades to clean the air and stabilize the carbon cycle. Can plants talk through the soil? Let's return underground to that fungal network connecting trees. Recent research suggests this network does more than share nutrients. It might transmit complex information. Scientists call it the Wood Wide Web, a biological internet running through forest soil. Trees can send chemical signals through the mycorrhizal network, warning neighbors of pest attacks, drought stress, or other threats. Receiving trees respond by adjusting their physiology, preparing defenses, or conserving resources. Some evidence suggests trees can recognize kin through the network, favoring their own offspring by sending them more resources. Larger, older trees, called mother trees, seem to play central roles, connected to hundreds of other trees, distributing resources to the community, like hub nodes in a network. When these mother trees are removed by logging, the entire network can destabilize, affecting the health of remaining trees. This has profound implications for forestry and conservation. It suggests forests aren't just collections of individual trees, but integrated communities where cooperation and communication enhance survival. The soil beneath a forest is alive with conversation, chemical whispers passing through fungal threads, trees sharing news of danger and abundance, old trees mentoring saplings, the forest thinking collectively through distributed intelligence that challenges our definitions of communication and awareness. How do flowers attract pollinators? Think about the relationship between flowers and pollinators. It's one of evolution's most beautiful partnerships, a co-developed strategy benefiting both parties. Flowers produce nectar, pollen, and other rewards that pollinators seek for food. In exchange, pollinators carry pollen from flower to flower, enabling plant reproduction. But here's the clever part. Flowers have evolved an astonishing array of strategies to attract specific pollinators and ensure effective pollen transfer. Color is one tool. Bees see ultraviolet light invisible to us, and many flowers have ultraviolet patterns guiding bees to nectar, like runway lights directing planes. Red flowers often attract hummingbirds, which see red well, unlike many insects. Scent is another. Sweet fragrances attract bees and butterflies, while some flowers smell like rotting meat to attract flies that normally lay eggs on carrion. Shape matters too. Tubular flowers suit long-tongued pollinators like hummingbirds and moths, while flat open flowers accommodate beetles and flies. Some flowers are specifically shaped to fit one pollinator species, ensuring no other can access the nectar, guaranteeing that pollen is transferred only to other flowers of the same species. This intricate matching of flower and pollinator shows how evolution shapes both parties together, each adapting to the other in an endless dance of mutual need. Why do some flowers only bloom at night? Let's consider night-blooming flowers. Pale blossoms opening after sunset, releasing heavy perfumes into the darkness. Why would a plant bloom at night when most pollinators are asleep? The answer is that some pollinators are nocturnal. Moths, bats, and certain beetles are active after dark, offering an ecological niche with less competition than the busy daytime pollinator market. Night-blooming flowers have adapted to attract these nocturnal visitors. They're typically white or pale-colored, visible in moonlight and darkness. They produce strong, sweet fragrances. Since visual cues are less effective at night, many release scent in pulses, creating clouds of perfume that drift on night air, advertising their location. Some, like the night-blooming cereus, open for only one night, a brief window of opportunity for pollination. Others, like evening primrose, open each evening and close at dawn, repeating nightly until pollinated. This nocturnal strategy reduces water loss, since temperatures are cooler and humidity higher at night, beneficial in hot, dry climates. It also avoids the heat stress of midday sun. Night blooming is an elegant solution, finding opportunity in the darkness, partnering with creatures that move through the night, conducting the business of reproduction under stars rather than sun. How do plants know when it's spring? Here's something remarkable about plant perception. Many temperate plants need to detect seasons accurately to time flowering, leafing, and growth appropriately. Bloom too early, and a late frost might kill delicate flowers. Too late, and you might miss the window when pollinators are most active. So how do plants sense the seasons? They use multiple cues. Day length is crucial. Plants have photoreceptors that measure how many hours of light they receive, detecting the lengthening days of spring. This is called photoperiodism. Some plants require long days to flower, others short days, each time to their optimal reproductive season. Temperature is another cue. Many plants require vernalization, exposure to prolonged cold before they can flower. Seeds or bulbs count cold days, and only after accumulating enough chilling hours will they respond to spring warmth. This prevents premature germination during brief winter warm spells. Plants essentially have calendars built into their biology, tracking light and temperature over weeks and months, integrating this information to predict seasonal changes. They're constantly monitoring their environment, processing data, making decisions about when to grow, when to flower, when to go dormant. This awareness of time, this ability to anticipate future conditions based on present signals, is a form of intelligence we rarely credit to organisms without brains. What happens when a plant gets stressed? Think about stress in plants. They can't run from danger, can't move to better conditions. Instead, they must endure and adapt. When plants experience stress, drought, extreme temperatures, herbivore attack, disease, they respond in sophisticated ways. At the cellular level, they produce heat shock proteins and other protective molecules that stabilize cellular structures. They adjust their metabolism, sometimes slowing growth, to conserve resources. They close stomata to prevent water loss during drought, even though this limits photosynthesis. Under herbivore attack, plants release volatile organic compounds, chemical distress signals that can attract predators of the herbivores, essentially calling for help. They also increase production of toxins or tough structural compounds that make leaves less palatable. Some grasses, when grazed, redirect growth from above ground to roots, waiting out the stress. Chronic stress can fundamentally alter plant development. Trees in windy areas grow shorter, sturdier trunks. Plants in drought-prone regions develop deeper roots, smaller leaves, waxy coatings. Stress responses can even be inherited. Plants stressed during seed development may produce offspring better adapted to those stressful conditions, a phenomenon called transgenerational plasticity. Plants remember stress, adjusting future behavior based on past experience. This isn't conscious memory, but it's memory nonetheless. Information stored and acting on future responses. Can plants defend themselves from predators? At first glance, plants seem defenseless against herbivores. They can't fight or flee, but evolution has armed them with sophisticated defenses. Physical barriers are the first line: thorns, spines, tough leaves, waxy coatings, silica particles that dull teeth. But chemical warfare is where plants truly excel. They produce an astonishing array of defensive compounds: alkaloids, tannins, terpenes, phenolics. These substances can be toxic, bitter, or digestive inhibitors, making plant tissue unpalatable or dangerous. Caffeine in coffee and tea is a defensive compound that affects insect nervous systems. Nicotine protects tobacco plants. Capsaicin makes peppers hot, deterring mammals while not affecting birds, which disperse pepper seeds. Some plants produce compounds that mimic insect hormones, disrupting herbivore development. Others release sticky resins that trap small insects. Interestingly, many defensive compounds are induced, produced only when the plant detects damage. This is energy efficient, avoiding the cost of constant chemical production. When a plant is eaten, it can increase toxin levels within hours, making subsequent bites less rewarding. Some plants even communicate the threat, warning neighbors that ramp up their own defenses preemptively. Chemical defense is a silent arms race, plants and herbivores evolving together, each trying to outmaneuver the other across evolutionary time. How do plants create their own medicine? Let's consider the overlap between plant defenses and human medicine. Many compounds plants produce to defend themselves turn out to have medicinal properties for us. Aspirin derives from salicylic acid found in willow bark, originally evolved to protect against pathogens. Morphine and codeine from poppies are potent painkillers for humans, but in plants they deter herbivores. Taxol, a powerful cancer drug, comes from Pacific yew trees. Artemisinin, an antimalarial, comes from sweet wormwood. The list goes on. Digitalis from foxglove for heart conditions. Quinine from cinchona bark for malaria. Vincristine from periwinkle for leukemia. We've harvested plant chemistry for millennia, using it to treat our ailments. In a sense, we're exploiting the chemical warfare plants developed against their own enemies. But we've only investigated a fraction of plant species for medicinal compounds. The world's rainforests alone contain tens of thousands of plant species, most never chemically analyzed. Each might produce unique compounds with potential medical applications. This is one reason biodiversity loss is so tragic. We're losing potential medicines before we even know they exist. Plants are master chemists, synthesizing complex molecules using only sunlight, air, and soil. Their laboratories are leaves and roots, their products potentially life-saving for humanity. We owe much of modern medicine to plant chemistry, to defenses evolution crafted over millions of years. Why do some plants produce poison? Here's an unsettling thought. Many common plants are poisonous, some lethally so. Poison ivy, oleander, hemlock, deadly nightshade, castor beans, all can cause serious harm or death. Why would plants produce such potent toxins? The answer is defense. Taken to an extreme, if you're a plant, being eaten is potentially fatal. Any trait that prevents herbivory increases your survival and reproduction. Mild toxins make you taste bad. Stronger toxins cause digestive distress, teaching herbivores to avoid you. The most potent toxins kill, ensuring that particular herbivore never eats another plant of your species, and serving as a warning to others who might notice dead animals near certain plants. It's a harsh strategy, but effective. Some plant toxins are extraordinarily sophisticated. Ricin from castor beans inhibits protein synthesis at the cellular level. Cyanogenic glycosides in certain plants release cyanide when cells are damaged. Alkaloids like strychnine interfere with nervous system function. These aren't random chemicals, but precisely targeted biological weapons. Interestingly, some herbivores have evolved resistance to specific toxins, leading to evolutionary arms races. Monarch butterflies, for instance, can eat toxic milkweed plants that kill most other insects. The toxins accumulate in the butterfly's body, making it toxic to predators. A borrowed defense. Poison is plants taking defense seriously. A chemical declaration that they're not food, backed by lethal consequences for those who ignore the warning. Can plants recognize their family members? Think about this remarkable discovery. Some plants can distinguish between relatives and strangers. When grown next to kin, siblings from the same parent plant, they compete less aggressively for resources than when grown next to unrelated individuals. They grow fewer competitive roots, allocate resources more generously, and generally cooperate more. How do they recognize relatives? Research suggests plants can detect chemical signatures in root exudates, the compounds roots release into surrounding soil. Each plant's signature is slightly different, and genetic relatives have similar signatures. This kin recognition has evolutionary logic. Your relatives share your genes, so helping them is indirectly helping your own genetic line. Cooperation among kin increases the family's overall fitness. This behavior has been observed in various species, from sea rockets to Douglas firs. It suggests plants have a form of social intelligence, able to assess their social environment and adjust behavior accordingly. They're not conscious of these decisions in any way we'd recognize, but the result is the same: cooperative behavior toward kin, competitive behavior toward strangers. This challenges our view of plants as purely competitive organisms, revealing that cooperation and social behavior exist even in rooted, brainless organisms. The forest is a social space, with familial bonds running beneath the soil, connecting relatives in invisible networks of mutual support. How do desert plants survive without water? Let's journey to one of Earth's harshest environments, the desert. Here, water is scarce, temperatures extreme, and survival seems nearly impossible. Yet plants thrive, using adaptations honed by millions of years of drought. Some avoid the problem by completing their entire life cycle during brief rainy periods. Desert annuals germinate after rain, grow rapidly, flower, set seed, and die within weeks, leaving seeds to wait years if necessary for the next rain. These ephemeral plants carpet deserts in spectacular blooms when conditions align, then vanish, leaving only seeds behind. Other plants, perennials like cacti and succulents, endure the drought. They store water in swollen tissues, stems, leaves, roots. Cacti store water in their thick stems, which expand like accordions when full. Agaves store it in succulent leaves. These plants also have specialized photosynthesis called cam metabolism, where they open stomata at night when it's cool and close them during hot days, minimizing water loss while still capturing carbon dioxide. Their root systems are often shallow but extensive, spreading wide to capture water from rare rains before it evaporates. Waxy coatings reduce transpiration. Spines provide shade and reduce airflow across the surface. Some plants drop their leaves during drought, going dormant until water returns. Desert plants are water misers, experts in conservation, surviving where nothing else can. Why are cacti covered in spines? At first glance, cactus spines seem like defense against herbivores. Don't eat me. I'm painful. That's partly true. Spines deter many animals from eating water-rich cactus flesh. But spines serve multiple functions beyond defense. They provide shade, reduce. Here's something surprising. Some plants disperse seeds explosively, building mechanical tension until fruits burst open, flinging seeds several feet or even yards away. Touch-me-not plants, also called jewelweed, have seed pods that explode when touched, startling the toucher and scattering seeds in all directions. The pods build turgor pressure as they mature. Water pressure inside cells creates tension. A slight disturbance triggers the pod to rupture, valves curling rapidly and catapulting seeds away. Squirting cucumber, true to its name, builds pressure until the fruit detaches and rockets away, spraying seeds from the hole where it attached. Witch hazel shoots seeds over 30 feet. The sandbox tree, a tropical species, produces large woody capsules that explode with a sound like gunfire, scattering seeds over 100 feet. These explosions happen when tensions built during drying or maturation are suddenly released, converting stored elastic energy into kinetic energy. It's the plant equivalent of a compressed spring or catapult. Ballistic dispersal requires energy investment, building structures that can contain and release pressure, but it guarantees seeds land some distance from the parent, reducing competition and increasing colonization chances. These exploding plants show how evolution finds endless creative solutions to fundamental problems. Who needs animals for dispersal when you can build your own biological cannon? It's plant engineering at its finest. Mechanical ingenuity grown from cellulose and turgor. How do trees grow so tall without muscles? Let's consider the engineering problem of being a tree. You need to lift water and nutrients from roots to leaves, potentially hundreds of feet up, working against gravity without pumps or muscles. How? The answer involves several elegant mechanisms working together. First, transpiration creates negative pressure. As water evaporates from leaves, it pulls more water up from below through xylem tubes, like sucking liquid through a straw. This works because of water's cohesion. Water molecules stick together through hydrogen bonding, forming continuous columns that can be pulled upward without breaking. Capillary action also helps. Water naturally rises in narrow tubes due to adhesion between water and tube walls. But the real marvel is how trees build themselves. Growth occurs in meristems, regions of actively dividing cells at root and shoot tips. Cells elongate, pushing the growing tip upward or outward. Behind the growing tip, cells differentiate into specialized tissues: xylem for water transport, phloem for sugar transport, structural fibers for support. Each year, trees add new layers of xylem beneath the bark, increasing diameter and strength. The old xylem dies, becoming heartwood that provides structural support. The tree essentially builds itself taller and stronger simultaneously, a construction project that never stops, using materials synthesized from air, water, and soil. No muscles, no machines, just the programmed behavior of millions of cells working in coordination, each performing its role in the collective enterprise of being a tree. Can plants remember things? Here's a fascinating question, pushing the boundaries of plant biology. Do plants have memory? Not memory like ours, not conscious recollection, but some form of information storage that influences future behavior? Research suggests yes. Plants exposed to drought can respond more quickly to subsequent droughts, as if they remember the stress and prepared responses. Venus flytraps count touches to their trigger hairs and remember the count for about 20 seconds, a short-term memory of sorts. Plants trained by repeatedly dropping them develop faster defensive responses, and this training can persist for weeks. Some plants can learn to ignore repeated harmless stimuli, a process called habituation, a simple form of learning. Even more intriguing, stressed plants can pass information to offspring through epigenetic changes. chemical modifications to DNA that affect gene expression without changing the sequence. Offspring of stressed plants are sometimes better prepared for similar stress, inheriting their parents' memory of environmental challenges. The mechanisms aren't fully understood. Plants don't have neurons or brains, but they clearly store information about past events and use it to modify future responses. This challenges our definitions of memory and learning, showing these aren't exclusive to animals with nervous systems. Plants have their own forms of information processing, storage, and retrieval, implemented through biochemical networks and gene regulation. They're not conscious, but they're not simple stimulus-response machines either. There's something in between, aware in ways we're only beginning to understand. Do plants sleep at night? Think about circadian rhythms, the roughly 24-hour cycles that govern biological processes in almost all living things. Plants have them too. Many plants exhibit nyctinasty, movements based on day-night cycles. Leaves fold at night and open during day. Flowers close at dusk and reopen at dawn. Sunflowers track the sun across the sky, then reset their position overnight to face east for sunrise. These aren't passive responses to light. They're controlled by internal clocks. Even in constant darkness, plants maintain rhythmic behaviors, proving it's an internal cycle, not just reaction to external cues. The circadian clock helps plants anticipate daily changes, preparing for dawn before light actually arrives, optimizing photosynthesis from the moment sun appears. It coordinates metabolism. Some processes happen during day, others at night. Plants that can't keep accurate time grow poorly, outcompeted by those with functioning clocks. So do plants sleep? Not like animals. They don't have brains that show different activity patterns, but they do have rest periods, times when growth slows, metabolism shifts, and they're less responsive to stimuli. Leaves droop, conserving energy and reducing water loss. It's a daily rhythm of activity and rest, waking and sleeping in a sense, though the mechanisms are completely different from animal sleep. Even rooted and silent, plants live on schedules, their lives structured by the rhythm of day and night, the turning of the planet beneath the sun. Can plants survive in space? Let's venture off Earth. Could plants survive in the harsh conditions of space? Without protection? No. The vacuum would freeze-dry them instantly. Radiation would destroy tissues, and lack of air pressure would be fatal. But in controlled environments, spacecraft, space stations, or future lunar or Martian bases, plants can grow, and research shows they adapt remarkably well. Plants have grown aboard the International Space Station for years in microgravity conditions. Roots don't know which way is down without gravity, so they grow in all directions unless guided by other cues like moisture gradients. Plant growth can actually be faster in microgravity in some cases, perhaps because they don't have to fight against their own weight. However, plants grown in space sometimes have weaker cell walls and may be more susceptible to infection since their immune responses evolved under Earth gravity. Radiation is a concern. Cosmic rays can damage DNA, though plants seem more radiation resistant than animals. The bigger challenges are logistical, providing light, water, nutrients, and air circulation in closed systems. Still, plants have successfully completed entire life cycles in space, flowering, producing seeds, with seeds germinating into a new generation. This proves space agriculture is possible. For long-duration missions to Mars or permanent off-world settlements, plants will be essential, providing food, oxygen, psychological comfort, and a connection to Earth life in the isolation of space. They're our partners in leaving the planet. How do scientists talk to plants? Here's a playful but serious question. Scientists can't literally talk to plants in conversational sense, but they've developed ways to monitor plant responses and listen to what plants are saying through their behavior. Sensors can measure electrical signals plants generate. Yes, plants have electrical activity, though different from animal nerves. When stimulated, plants produce action potentials, electrical waves that propagate through tissues. Scientists can record these, essentially reading plant neural activity without neurons. Other instruments measure volatile organic compounds plants release, their chemical language. Gas chromatography can identify specific molecules and track how they change when plants are stressed or attacked. Imaging technologies can visualize water movement through xylem, track photosynthesis in real time, and watch roots grow underground using special cameras. Genetic tools allow scientists to add fluorescent proteins that glow when specific genes activate, showing which pathways are active under different conditions. Scientists can even modify plants to produce different responses, testing hypotheses about plant perception and decision-making. So while we can't have conversations with plants, we're learning to interpret their signals, to understand their chemical vocabulary, to watch their electrical activity, and to read their gene expression patterns. We're learning plant languages, becoming translators between plant and human worlds. It's a one-sided conversation, but we're getting better at listening, at understanding what plants are telling us about their experience of being alive. What would happen if all plants disappeared? Imagine the unthinkable. Every plant on Earth vanishes overnight. The consequences would be catastrophic and swift. Within weeks, herbivores would begin starving. No grass, no leaves, no plant matter to eat. Large herbivores would die first, their massive bodies requiring enormous food intake. Smaller herbivores might last longer on stored food or by switching to other diets. But ultimately, all would perish. Carnivores would follow. Initially, there might be abundant prey in dying herbivores, but once herbivores died, carnivores would have nothing to eat. Decomposers would feast temporarily on the mass die-off, but then they too would decline without fresh organic matter. The atmosphere would gradually change. Oxygen production would cease. Though oxygen levels wouldn't drop immediately, Earth's atmosphere contains enough oxygen to last generations. More concerning would be carbon dioxide buildup with no plants to absorb it. Climate would destabilize, likely warming significantly. Soil would erode rapidly without plant roots to hold it. Rain would wash away topsoil, creating massive sediment flows into oceans. The entire planet would become a barren wasteland within years. Humanity would face immediate crisis. No crops, no food production. We'd survive on stored food temporarily, but within months, civilization would collapse under starvation. Even our technology couldn't save us. We can't synthesize food from raw elements at the scale needed. The scenario is hypothetical, but it reveals a truth. Plants aren't optional. They're the foundation of Earth's habitability. Without them, Earth would be Mars, lifeless, airless, dead. Could we create artificial plants? Here's a technological frontier. Scientists are working on artificial photosynthesis, trying to replicate what plants do naturally. Convert sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide into fuel and oxygen. It's harder than it sounds. Plants use extraordinarily complex molecular machinery, evolved over billions of years. Replicating even part of it requires cutting-edge nanotechnology, catalysts, and materials science. Current artificial photosynthesis systems can split water into hydrogen and oxygen using sunlight, or reduce carbon dioxide into simple organic compounds. But efficiency is far below natural photosynthesis, and systems require rare, expensive materials. Still, progress continues. If successful, artificial photosynthesis could produce clean fuels, capture carbon dioxide from air, and generate oxygen in environments without plants. Some researchers envision artificial leaves, thin sheets coated with catalysts that could be deployed in deserts or on Mars, producing oxygen and fuel. Others imagine nanoparticles injected into oceans, enhancing natural photosynthesis. We're not close to replacing real plants, which remain far more efficient, self-repairing, and cost-effective than any human technology, but understanding photosynthesis at the molecular level teaches us about energy conversion, quantum mechanics, and biological engineering. Perhaps future technologies will combine biological and artificial components, hybrid systems using engineered proteins or synthetic catalysts alongside natural enzymes. The goal isn't necessarily to replace plants, but to supplement them, to extend photosynthetic processes into places where plants can't grow, or to optimize specific aspects for industrial purposes. Plants remain the gold standard, but we're learning their tricks. What does the future of plant life look like? Let's look ahead. Climate change is already affecting plant distributions. Ranges shifting toward poles and higher elevations as temperatures warm. Flowering times shifting earlier, growing seasons lengthening. Some plants will adapt, their populations migrating or evolving tolerance to new conditions. Others won't adapt fast enough and will face extinction, particularly those with narrow climate requirements or limited dispersal abilities. Habitat fragmentation makes migration difficult. A tree can't walk across farmland to reach suitable climate hundreds of miles away. We may see widespread forest die-offs in some regions as climate becomes unsuitable, while other areas become newly forested. Invasive species may spread further as mild winters fail to kill them. Agricultural plants face challenges too. Crops evolved for specific climates will need adaptation to changing conditions, potentially requiring new varieties or genetically modified crops with heat tolerance, drought resistance, or disease resistance. Simultaneously, plants face other stressors: pollution, habitat loss, overexploitation. Some species will disappear before we've even studied them. But there's also reason for hope. Conservation efforts, habitat restoration, seed banks preserving genetic diversity, and recognition of plants' importance are all growing. People are planting trees, protecting forests, creating green spaces. The future of plant life depends largely on human choices. We can continue degrading ecosystems, or we can work with plants to restore and protect them. Plants are resilient, adaptable, patient. Given a chance, they'll flourish. The question is whether we'll give them that chance. Why are plants the true masters of Earth? Think about dominance. Who really rules this planet? Humans might seem like obvious candidates with our technology, cities, and global influence. But step back and consider the evidence. Plants were here first, colonizing land over 400 million years ago, long before animals followed. They transformed Earth, creating the oxygen-rich atmosphere that makes animal life possible. They still produce most of the oxygen we breathe and most of the biomass on Earth. In terms of sheer mass, plants vastly outweigh all animals combined. They've survived multiple mass extinctions that killed off dominant animal groups. Dinosaurs are gone, but their contemporary plants endure. Adapted and diversified, plants occupy virtually every terrestrial environment and many aquatic ones. They've evolved incredible diversity. Perhaps 400,000 species, maybe more undiscovered. They're the foundation of nearly every ecosystem, the primary producers supporting all other life. They don't need us, but we desperately need them. Plants are patient, resilient masters, playing a long game over geological timescales. They've shaped landscapes, climates, and the composition of the atmosphere itself. They're quietly essential, the green infrastructure of life. While we worry about dominating nature, plants have already won. They run the planet, and we're just tenants in their world, dependent on their continued tolerance of our presence. The true power on Earth is silent, rooted, and green. And as you drift off to sleep, surrounded by the oxygen they provide, remember that every breath is a gift from the real masters, plants, the quiet rulers of Earth.